Good morning, and I want to welcome everybody to the Government Contract Committee meeting this morning. Unfortunately, we'll start off with a somber note this morning. Representative McCool will not be here this morning, as on his way here, he received terrible news that his sister had passed away. So if you all will join me, I would really like to just have a moment of silence for Representative McCool and the loss of his sister. We'll bow our heads. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It looks like we do have a quorum, and so clerk, would you please call the roll?
Senator Meredith. Present. Senator Richardson. Senator Thomas. Here. Representative Ballman. Representative McCool. Representative Rourks.
Here.
Representative Petrie. Representative Hart.
Here.
And Chairman Douglas.
Present. Thank you very much. We do have a quorum, and we are duly constituted to do business for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. The first item on the agenda is the consideration of the minutes of April 14 meeting of this committee, for which I wasn't here. But is there a motion that they be considered as approved? Motion by Senator Meredith. Second by Senator Thomas. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Senator Richardson. Senator Thomas.
Aye.
Representative Ballman. Representative McCool. Representative Rourks.
Yes.
Representative Hart.
Yes.
And Chairman Douglas.
Aye. Aye. Motion carries. Now, the total number of items on the agenda today are 482 in the amount of $138,550,673.39. All vendors are registered with the Secretary of State's office. The next item. The next item is the deferred list from April 2025 agenda. The first item is with the Office of the Controller and is number 3 on the April routine PSC green list. If the representatives are here, please identify yourself for the record. Move on up to the front.
Sorry about that.
No
Joe
problem.
McDaniel, Executive Director, Office of the Controller.
Barbara Dickens, General Counsel.
Stacy White, Executive Director of the Office for Procurement Services.
Thank you all so very much. What I would ask is, could you pull your mics right up to you? I think it would help everybody in the room hear a lot better. If you would, raise your right hands for me, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yep.
Thank you very much. Senator Meredith has some questions.
Thank you for being available to us this morning, and thank you for the replies to the questions we submitted regarding this agreement. And just to follow up on a couple of those, our responsibilities are very specific, and in looking at this particular contract, I'm scrutinizing under the provision that we're supposed to look at the amount and duration of a contract and also the appropriateness of an exchange of resources. And what caught our attention last month, I believe, is the fact that the previous vendor was doing this for about $300,000 a year, and now the contract is a $1 million a year contract. And one of the questions that was asked was, why was there a decision made to award a one-year contract when historically it's been multiple years? And our response was, decision was made to develop a new RFP to encourage more competition. Well, when price goes up almost $600,000, you wonder if inviting more competition really was wise decision, but obviously being a little bit facetious there. But again, what I struggle with is this kind of increase that we're seeing, and this was not the low bidder, obviously, who received this contract. But I guess the question I would have is, were we leaving close to $700,000 on the table in terms of things that the previous vendor was not doing?
Yeah. Thank you, Senator Meredith, and thank you for sending those questions to us last month. In regards to your question there, I will say the previous vendor had that contract exclusively for over 20 years. And there have been, at least in my time, at least 3 no bid, not practical to bid procurements. And we felt like it was time to send this procurement out to bid. I will also say that in the 23-24 year, that vendor was paid $1.2 million in commission fees and broker fees. So we do feel like if you look at historical cost, that we are within line and still, historically in line with what the cost really is.
Will the new vendor not be paid broker fees, vendor fees?
The broker fee is the $1 million on the contract, sir. Yeah. But I will say if you look at the 23-24, the broker who had the award before was paid 1.2, and they had that contract for 20 years.
You're going to explain that to me a little bit, because why would they submit a bid for $300,000 if they had been collecting over $1 million?
Unfortunately, sir, I don't have that answer. That would be an answer for the person who submitted the bid.
I think that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Coach Earhart, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Referring to the questions that we sent out to you, let's look down at number 11. The question is, the past performance of vendors considered in the scoring process. You answered with one word, no. Can you help me understand how past performances didn't have any bearing on this?
There you go.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't have it on. So normally that is not calculated in the RFP process when we're doing that. And the reason why is we have found in the past that when we're asking for past performance, the vendors always give us the clients that are going to give them a good rating, right? So we weren't really getting a true answer, we felt. So that we lean heavily on the technical part of the evaluation process to understand what they can provide to the Commonwealth and for that agency in need.
Okay, thanks for that. I mean, I was just a little confused because on question number 10, it asked each of the bidders to describe their experience with self-insured and large retention programs and the risk associated with the operations of those programs. To me, that sounds like a past performance question. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, we don't exclude it tremendously, but we don't go and ask for give them questions. We don't give them ratings, a score based on just past performance anymore, really. We do it every once in a while, but not very often for that reasons that we want to be able to evaluate it as fairly as we possibly can.
All right, thank you. Another question I had, in question 21, you disclosed that Aon's bid came in at $1 million. 2 of the other 3 were as much as one being almost 3 times less, the other one half that amount. Explain to me what sets Aon apart. I mean, I also noticed that they had the highest technical score. Is that kind of what set it apart? You were touching on that a little bit. Could you maybe explain a little bit more on that?
Yes, sir. So the evaluation committee, they read the proposals of the technical of what are submitted, and they can only only weigh in exactly what that vendor proposes. So even though they may know something that the vendor may be able to do, if they did not submit it in that proposal, it cannot be evaluated or considered. So that's one of the jobs that we do, is we make sure that the integrity of the procurement is upheld at the most highest, and we keep the evaluators focused on what exactly is proposed in their RFPs.
All right, thank you for that. One final question. Question number 24 that you answered. I did some research, and I can't find a single office or service team in Kentucky for Aon. I might be mistaken, but is the closest office for them in Nashville?
I do believe that that's what the proposal said.
In the proposal, their closest office is Nashville. They do have other government clients that they service in the state of Kentucky, local governments, other entities that they do provide. That Nashville office provides service to the state of Kentucky, businesses in the state of Kentucky.
Okay.
Governments.
And the reason what kind of brought my attention to that, the other bidders all had multiple offices in Kentucky. So I was just, I think I might understand this now with your answer to the technical question. I guess the reason that we went with the out-of-state company was because of the technical score. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
All right. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Co-Chair Hart. I would like to correct one thing, and that is that the question of how much was going to be paid, or at least was being submitted, is really not in the hands of the submitter. It's in the hands of the people who review the contract and ultimately review the contract. People who are, you made a statement earlier that Senator Meredith may have to ask the contractor why they submitted such a bid. I don't care what they submit. It ultimately rests with the people who are reviewing the contract and what they think the Commonwealth is getting. And I think maybe that's one of the things that we need to do here in the government is decide who's in charge of how these contracts are awarded. And I'm not sure that that's been done very efficiently in the past. With that being said, do I have a motion to consider these contracts reviewed without objection?
Mr. Chair, could I do a follow-up question, please?
Yes, go ahead, Senator Meredith.
I'm still confused about these fees. You said, and again, I'm not trying to be argumentative, just trying to understand it, that this previous vendor fees was in excess of $1 million. But they bid $345,000. Was their previous, can you tell me what their previous contract, what they were paid? I mean, what they bid?
On the the 1.2 million that I mentioned, that was a not practical to bid award. And I can tell you, their bid that was submitted, as Stacy mentioned, for this contract that's under question today, again, if you look at the technical scoring, they were third. We would assume we have the technical scores. So the evaluators are not provided cost. The cost is only the procurement person that's supposed to uphold the integrity of the procurement. So that's the person who sees the cost. The technical evaluators did not see the cost until after they had scored the technical proposals to ensure that the vendor is going to be able to provide the services requested under the RFP. So in regards to that, I would say, and again, you can look at the scoring, that you can see where the scoring fell in Aon. I think that was in question 22, where Aon received 330 points, and then you can see the differences. The next closest one was 90 points difference. Below that, it was even further, and below that, it was even further on the technical scoring. So at that point, that's whenever, after that technical scoring is done, that's whenever they come back, the procurement person to uphold the integrity of 45A, then tells the team, okay, here's what every vendor submitted for cost, and this is how they're rated. So the $345,000 proposal did receive the highest points possible for cost.
You said the previous contract was not bid.
It had been under a not practical to bid, and that was the reason for that was because this historically had always been an RFB, a bid process, and we did not have the time. We did a 1-year extension. That was one of the questions as well. So we did a 1-year extension with that vendor that had the contract for 20 years. We did that 1-year extension in order to allow the technical teams to come up with a contract, a proposal, an RFP that would meet the requirements to provide the service that the Commonwealth is looking for.
Well, you mentioned that they've had the contract for 20 years. In previous contracts, do you know if there were other bidders?
I do not, sir. I'm sure we have some of those records still. I can tell you we did an RFB, a bid process before, and there was only one person who responded. And then with the RFP, which you're evaluating today, we had a total of 4 vendors that were, responses. One, as you see in the questions that were provided and answers, one deemed non-responsive. So we had 5 under the RFP, which goes back to increased competition. And under the bid process, we were only getting 1 company to respond.
Again, just so I understand this, the red flag on this was the difference in the pricing. That it appears that under
Sure.
the new contract, we're going to have $600,000 more in expense. But you're telling me now that no, not really, because the
No.
current contract, the fee is comparable, in fact, a little bit less.
That's correct, sir. So, Senator, you're exactly correct. If we were to look at what we've paid in the past for broker fees under the bid process, the $1 million is in line, if not less, on prior contracts.
Okay. Well, again, that's just a big question mark for me, is how somebody has over $1 million in fees but bids $345,000 for a contract renewal. And I'm bewildered by that. I really would like to know the rest of the story, but that's beyond the scope of this committee. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Meredith. Any other questions? Okay, with that being the case, do we have a motion to consider the contract reviewed without objection?
Mr. Chair, my preference is we just not take action on this contract and let it go to Finance Cabinet for approval anyway. I think there's still too many questions. Responsibility of this committee is try to give this whole process some validity and stamp of approval, and I just don't feel comfortable doing that. And it's not an indictment of these folks. I know you're doing your job, but I'm just still uneasy about this contract, and I can't give an unequivocal approval. So I just prefer just to let it move on.
With no response to considering the contract, the motion on the table at this particular time is to take no action.
Second.
Okay. We have Senator Meredith made the motion. Co-Chair Hart made a second. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed say no. Clerk, call the roll.
Senator Meredith,
Aye.
Senator Richardson, Senator Thomas,
Mr. Chair, I'm going to explain my vote, please.
Please tell us your vote, then explain, please.
Oh, I'm going to vote aye. But I'm going to tell you why I'm voting aye and why I can't approve this at this time. Number one, it defies intelligence, in my opinion, to not consider past performance when you're hiring anyone, whether it's a lawyer, whether it's a contractor, or whatever you might need. You always look to what has that person done in the past, what referrals have I gotten from friends, what have they done for me before, what are my neighbors saying about this person. I mean, you're going to hire somebody based upon something that they've done in the past that you've heard good things about, that you're going to hire them. I mean, that's just how life works in the real world. So to say that past performance is not considered when you're issuing $1 million contract, I'm not buying that. I'm just not buying that, okay? And then the second thing, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, when it comes to universities, I really do give them a pass when it comes to hiring vendors out of state, because universities need specialized expertise, specialized knowledge. So if they hire someone from California or New York, I kind of give them a pass. When it comes to routine things like lawyers, for example, which we see a lot of, or in this case, brokerage services. I don't know why we don't take a Kentucky first mentality. I just really don't. And I'm always reluctant to award huge sums of money to out-of-state vendors on what I consider routine kind of contracts. And so for those two reasons is why I'm voting aye and say I can't support this contract at this time, but I'm not going to not support it. I'm just going to pass.
Representative Ballman, Representative McCool, Representative Rourks,
Aye.
Representative Hart,
Yes.
and Chairman Douglas.
Aye. Motion passes. The contract will move forward to the Finance Cabinet, and they will make a decision. I want to thank you all very much for the information that you've provided this morning, and I'd like to see you all smile before you get up from the table. Wasn't that bad?
Senator Meredith, Senator Thomas, please reach out with additional questions. We'll be happy to answer those or meet with you in person. We do, honestly, from all of us in the Finance Cabinet and the Office of the Controller, we want you all to feel comfortable with the contracts as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Second item on the deferred list is from the Department of Community-Based Services. It is number 24 on the April MOA amendment yellow list. If the representatives are here, please identify yourself for the record. And while you're coming this way, Co-Chair Hart and Senator Meredith, both very distinguished gentlemen, will have some questions for you. But first, if you will introduce yourself.
Misty Salmons, Director of the Division.
If you would, yes. Again, pull the microphones. They're inanimate. You know, I try to get everybody to pull the microphones up, and I thank you very much for doing that.
Misty Salmons, Director for the Division of Administration.
It's still not on. I'm sorry, ma'am.
Misty Salmons, Director of the Division of Administration and Financial Management for DCBS.
Amanda Body, Director of the Division of Prevention and Community Wellbeing for DCBS.
Raise your hands, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so very much. You can begin. First of all, Co-Chair Hart, you have questions? Number 24.
Yeah, I actually had a question, but I just realized that I got the answer in an email. So I've got it in front of me.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I'm good.
Senator Meredith.
Well, the question was very straightforward. Discussion last month was we were increasing this by $265,000, and we were assured that these funds are going to be reallocated from other areas. So the question was, what are we taking from to give to this particular contract?
So we didn't really take anything from anything. We have a reduced expenditures of language services within DCBS. Over the past several years, we have worked diligently to get commonly used forms translated to languages in the state, which has languages used in the state, which has reduced the amount of interpreter services that we have needed this year. So we utilize those funds to fund this contract.
All right. Motion.
Motion by Senator Meredith. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Co-Chair Hart. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Meredith,
Aye.
Senator Richardson, Senator Thomas, Representative Ballman, Representative McCool, Representative Rourks, Representative Hart,
Yes.
and Chairman Douglas.
Aye. Contract is approved. Thank you so very much for your
Thank
time
you.
this morning, ladies. Now, the next order of business is a consideration of the agenda, including the personal services contract list, personal services contract amendment list, memorandum of agreement list, memorandum of agreement amendment list, and the deferred list, except for those items selected for further review. Now, do we have a motion to consider these contracts reviewed without objection?
So, second.
Have a motion by Co-Chair Hart and a second by Senator Meredith. All those in favor, aye. All those opposed, say no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Meredith, Senator Richardson. Senator Thomas. Representative Ballman. Representative McCool. Representative Works.
Aye.
Representative Hart.
Yes.
Chairman Douglas.
Aye. Contracts are approved without issue, and we'll move forward. Now, we get to the meat of our meeting, I suppose. The first item on the pulled list is with the Board of Hairdressers and Cosmetologists. It's number 3 on the routine PSC green list. If the representatives over here, would you please? And as you're coming, I'll let you know that Senator Meredith will be having some questions. But first, I'll let you get comfortable. If you will, please introduce yourselves for the record.
Joni Upchurch, Executive Director of the Board of Cosmetology.
Thank you.
Eden Davis Stevens, General Counsel for the Board of Cosmetology.
Thank you very much, ladies. Will you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you so very much. I'll turn it over to Senator Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. Is this a renewal?
No, this is an initial contract.
First time?
Yes.
We're given what this contract will do, but the question I have is, who's been handling these responsibilities before this contract?
So I'm the general counsel. I've been present in this position for 4 months. Previously, the general counsel, my predecessor, left in March of 2024. So a series of special counsel and other conflict counsel has had to be utilized by the office. We have an unusual amount of litigation right now. Currently, there are 11 actions that are either in circuit court, federal district court, or the Court of Appeal. And this one in particular came as I think I was being hired, and the special counsel was trying to start rotating off as they are obligated to their duties in the cabinet that they work for. So they anticipated the needs of this litigation, that it would involve a lot of volume, and our office is just simply not equipped. Like, I am the only legal staff there. We don't have a paralegal. So this would require an office that had investigators and other attorneys to help handle this.
Sleep really is overrated.
Oh, sure. And as members of this committee, you're probably familiar with, there's also the Loic report. There are a lot of changes that are tied to our current disciplinary and system. And right now, I like to use the trope of I'm rebuilding the plane as I'm flying it. So there's still a heavy volume of just day-to-day casework as we are trying to implement new ways of doing things, especially like just basically maintaining due process and handling licensing cases as basically every other agency is with the 13B process.
I appreciate that. And is this, one final question, is this a contract not to exceed? I mean, will we actually be spending the total $50,000, or depend on the workload? Or?
We are hoping not to spend that, but my estimate was based off of litigation. We do believe that a strong defense is available to us, and so I was anticipating, based on other recent invoices for other matters, that if this, if motion practice was handled and oral argument, that number could quickly be utilized, but that was more of just a ceiling than anticipated cost. So we're hopeful the cost is far below that, but I just wanted to ensure that we had the funds available.
Well, your funding source are agency fees, 100%. Are you funded?
Correct. We actually at this moment are running at a surplus, so we actually are able to cover the fees for this. Thankfully, I know. Well, I am nervous about relaying that to the committee a little bit, but.
So that's the only source of funding that this board has is through licensing?
Correct.
Fees?
Yes, fully funded. Yes.
All right. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Senator Thomas?
Yes, Senator Douglas. And I want to say, I would urge all of us to strongly support this. As you know, Mr. Chair, and Senator Meredith, and Senator Richardson wasn't here in 24. But we've passed in the last 2 years Senate Bill 14 and Senate Bill 22 to address the abuses that we saw with regard to the area of hairdressers, cosmetologists, nail technicians. And we have done a lot of good work as a legislative body to address those concerns. In addition, I sit on the Legislative Oversight Investigation Committee. And in November last year, we came out with a scathing report that highlighted a lot of bad acts regarding the Kentucky Board of Hairdressers and Cosmetologists prior to the changes we made in Senate Bill 14 and Senate Bill 22. So this is an area that I'm very familiar with. And so they do have a lot of litigation. There's no question about it. I know that very well. And so I think this is a contract that's I mean, it's just what we should do to support this contract and to give them the tools they need to sort through all this litigation, because they've got a lot of corrective action to take, and it's going to take a few years to get things back to where they can focus on the work of just giving Kentucky the best hairdressers and cosmetology and nail technicians practice possible. But right now they're tied up in court a lot. So I would strongly encourage us to get behind them and support this particular contract.
Any other questions? Motion by Senator Meredith. Do I hear a second to have this? Thank you. Second by Senator Thomas. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed say no. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Senator Meredith. Aye. Senator Richardson. Aye. Senator Thomas. Aye. Representative Ballman. Representative McCool. Representative Rourke.
Aye.
Representative Hart.
Yes.
And Chairman Douglas.
Aye. Contract passes without issues. Ladies, thank you so very much for your
Thank
time
you.
today. And
Thank you,
for
Mr.
your
Chair.
answers. Next item on the pulled list is with the Board of Pharmacy. It's number 4 on the routine PSC green list. The agency that has submitted this contract actually has asked that this contract be deferred to the June 2025 meeting of this particular committee. So with that request, do we have a motion to defer the contract until the June meeting? So moved by Co-Chair Hart. Second by Senator Richardson. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Meredith. Aye. Senator Richardson. Senator Thomas. Aye. Representative Ballman. Representative McCool. Representative Rourke.
Aye.
Representative Hart.
Yes.
And Chairman Douglas.
Aye. So this contract will be deferred until our next meeting. Now, the next items on the pulled list is with the Department for Medicaid Services, and is number 6 on the routine PSC green list, and number 3 on the PSC amendment ivory list. If the representatives are present, would you please identify yourself, come up to the front and identify yourselves for the records. I'll start off with a question on number 6. And I think Co-Chair Hart and I both have questions on number 3 on the ivory list. Before we get started, what I'd like to say, and I know we're guilty of this too, but we have a limited amount of time for our committee meeting, and I would like for the answers to be as concise as possible, so that but be adequate. What we need to answer the question, we won't put pressure on you, and we will try to extend that same respect to you all. So if you would please just identify yourself for the record.
Lisa Lee, Commissioner for the Department for Medicaid Services.
Edith Sloan, Director of Division of Health Plan Oversight.
Thank you very much, and welcome, ladies. It's always so nice because you guys always smile. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you so very much. With that being said, if we look at number 6 on the green list, my question is this, and this is about it says monthly payments, and maybe it says from the general fund monthly. Does that mean there will be funds withdrawn monthly? Because the total contract number is $103,500. It's a real simple question. Is that a yes or no?
So If they bill us monthly, it is, but they haven't been lately. There's two different audits. There's a financial audit and a programmatic audit, and different people do each of those. And it really starts like in October to still going on right now.
Okay. Well, that leads me to my second question. Have you ever found deficiencies?
Yes, we have.
What's done with that information about deficiencies?
It goes to the commissioner, and it goes to, I should let you answer. Sorry.
If there is a deficiency, we will investigate the reason for that deficiency and make sure that there's a corrective action plan so that those instances do not happen again in the future.
Who is made aware of that, if I may, Madam Commissioner?
It just depends on the type of deficiency. It may just stop at my level. If it's something very simple, it could go on up to the secretary level.
Okay. Let's finish this, then we'll move to number 3, if that's okay, Coach Hart. Do I have a motion to consider this contract reviewed without objection?
So moved.
Okay. Senator Meredith, who was the second? Okay. Second was Representative Rourke. Okay. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed say no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Senator Richardson. Aye. Senator Thomas.
Aye.
Representative Ballman. Representative McCool. Representative Rourke.
Aye.
Representative Hart.
Yes.
And Chairman Douglas.
Aye. Thank you so very much, ladies. This contract will move forward, and I do appreciate that information. But before you go, we still have another one. We have number 3 on the Ivory list.
Yes.
And Coach Hart, I'll let you start out with your question.
Thank you. My understanding is that on the external independent reviews, they cost approximately like $500 a review. How many reviews does this organization plan to do each year?
Those reviews depend on the number of appeals that are filed by providers, so it varies. As you know, this is part of Senate Bill 20, and it's been enacted, I think, since 2016, and each year those number of appeals do increase based on the number of providers that are enrolled. Of course, we have seen an increase in the number of providers enrolled in the Department for Medicaid Services, but it just depends each year. But we'd be more than happy to get you a year-by-year count of the number of appeals that they have been doing.
All right. Well, and it kind of leads into my second question. I guess you're anticipating 600 more this cycle. Can you maybe explain or elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, based on the number of providers enrolled in the program and the number of claims that providers want to appeal, it would just depend, and we do anticipate an increase in the number of appeals going forward. We're not sure that we'll use the entire $300,000 increase that has been requested, but again, happy to get you those numbers.
All right, thank you so much. And one final question: Does the independent review process, does it result in changes of the appeal? Does that ever happen? Or?
Yes, sometimes it does. Sometimes the appeals are overturned, and again, we do track that, and we're happy to provide those numbers for you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Coach Hart. I heard this. I heard the explanation. I'm still trying to digest it. So this contract, I'm trying to understand, is for the appeals process, for the external reviews.
That's part of the contract. The other part of the contract is that the Island Peer Review Organization conducts various assesses, if you will, various components of the managed care contract to make sure that the managed care organizations are in compliance, for example, with network adequacy. They also review areas for performance improvement projects, and they do create an annual report for us that is posted on our website. This last report for 2024, I think, was 104 pages. They do have recommendations and findings in that report. So the appeals is just part of the contract, and we do anticipate an increase in the number of appeals. So therefore, we have requested an increase in the amount for this contract of about $300,000.
which leads me to two questions, Madam Commissioner. If there were a lower number of managed care organizations, would we expect the cost of the reviews to go down or the number of reviews to go down?
It would. I don't think I could adequately answer that. I think because the appeals, it would be based on the number of appeals that providers file based on claim disputes.
Well, currently we have a number of different MCOs or managed care organizations who have different business models, shall I say. And I know as a physician, I'm working with multiple business models. So when I submit bills, I have to view them differently, depending upon because they have different business models. I guess my question is, if we can bring those business models more in line with one another, would that in fact help our healthcare providers better understand what it is that they need to do to make sure that they are billing in a way that the managed care organizations can understand what's going on within their practice, and therefore possibly bring down the cost of healthcare in that area?
Well, I think that if all processes were similar, which I think they sort of are, because the appeals that we're seeing the increase is based on administrative appeals. For example, the claim hasn't been completed properly. Maybe the provider has left off a modifier, or maybe they haven't completed one certain field. So I believe that provider education on completing the form and making sure that those all the boxes on the claim form were completed appropriately and submitting clean claims definitely would reduce in the number of appeals that were filed.
From the provider side, I can tell you that's not a mirror image. From the provider side, it is. We are trying to figure out what do the managed care organizations want from us so that we can submit this claim and get paid. It really is a little frustrating to have to wait 6 to 8 months to get paid sometimes, and that's only because of the inconsistency within the business models that in the healthcare space we see among the managed care organizations. I think they think they're being very, very clear, but with most physicians being in the top 0.5% of the educated people in the world, I think they probably can probably figure that out if they have consistency within the managed care space. So I really enjoy this conversation with you. Senator Meredith has a question.
Because I know Commissioner Lee loves pressure. Pressure makes diamonds, doesn't it, Commissioner?
It does.
Just, did I hear you say that one of the responsibilities of this organization is to look at network adequacy?
Yes, that's correct.
And when they look at it, they send back information. What kind of information do they send back?
We do have, for example, in our annual report that I referenced, a chart that shows specifically every MCO, and it shows a variety of different provider types, such as primary care, rural health clinics, and it will show each managed care organization and the percentage of adequacy that they have.
And if they don't have an adequate number, what happens?
Well, it just typically depends on the provider type. For example, primary care, they need to have 100% adequacy. So if that is adequate, then there's no action taken. Again, there is a very specific amount that they are required to have. But when you get into some of the pediatric specialists, for example, they're not going to have 100% adequacy. And some of those provider types are not required to have 100% adequacy because it's just not, again, when you look at, for example, pediatric oncology, for example, you never know when you're going to need those types of providers, but it shows a sampling of every one of those provider types and the network adequacy. And again, happy to send a link to that report so you could review it and see the information that's in there.
Well, I remember previously we approved a contract, I think, with University of Kentucky to do a study on network adequacy. Is this to validate the work that these folks have done, or is it going to tell us something different?
It would tell us something different. For example, this one, just the Island Peer Review Organization, or IPRO, looks at the number of members enrolled in a managed care organization and the number of providers contracted. The University of Kentucky study is actually going to look at the number of providers that take a set number of Medicaid members, for example. They're going to say, do you have an open panel? Do you have a closed panel, and it would be more detailed than the Island peer review.
How could we ever resolve the fact that the MCOs have to have 100% network adequacy for primary care, correct?
Yes.
But yet in rural Kentucky, which 40% of our population, only 17% of our primary care physicians are there. There seems to be an inconsistency in that. How can we be at 100% when we don't have an adequate number of primary care physicians in rural Kentucky?
Well, when we look at the number of individuals and the panel number, we can look at, for example, the number of providers that see Medicaid members. And it does appear that there are enough, based on the numbers that we're looking at, it does appear that the managed care organizations have adequate networks.
Well, are we looking, when we're looking at that universe, we're saying 100%, is that 100% of the primary physicians in the state? And what I'm getting at is if we have 10,000 primary care physicians, but we actually need 20,000 primary care physicians, are we taking the percentage of the 20,000 or the 10,000?
I'd have to go back and look at how the data is actually analyzed and looked at, but based on what we're seeing, each MCO has enough network adequacy for the members enrolled in their panel. Now, does that take into account that one provider is seeing, multiple individuals? It looks at time and distance. So it does say that individuals, for example, in Eastern Kentucky, have a provider, a primary care provider, within 60 miles, 60 minutes of their home. So it does look at time and distance. I'm not sure that it does look at the actual number of providers delivering service in that area.
Well, we know one there we're really struggling with the dental services. I can't imagine that any MCO can meet that standard. So what's Department of Medicaid doing to help fix that void?
I think that's a very complex issue, and this is not something that is just unique to Medicaid. For example, we know that there is a dental shortage across the state. Individuals with insurance, and like myself, sometimes don't have access and immediate access to a dentist. So it's not unique to Medicaid, and I think it's a broader conversation that needs to be had about what we can do to bring more dentists into the state, keep them in the state, and help them build their practice up, and particularly take Medicaid patients.
But you would have to admit the shortage is more pronounced with the Medicaid population, because I know there's multiple counties that have no dental services for Medicaid patients.
I'd have to go back and do some research, but I do know that there is a dental shortage across the state, and it's not unique to Medicaid patients.
All right, thank you. Well, again, what concerns me is somebody's conducting a study, and we know what the outcome is, but we don't do anything to the outcome. But another conversation, another day. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Meredith. Representative or Co-Chair Hart actually has a question.
Yeah, I just Commissioner Lee, when you're referencing the number of providers that actually, are you referring to the providers that actually bill or those that are just enrolled?
We're referring to those that actually bill, because the appeals process is based on the claim disputes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to consider this contract reviewed without objection?
So moved.
Senator Meredith. Do I have a second? Okay, Co-Chair Hart. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote no. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Senator Meredith,
Aye.
Senator Richardson, Senator Thomas, Representative Ballman, Representative McCool, Representative Rourke,
Aye.
Representative Hart,
Yes.
Chairman Douglas.
Aye. Madam Commissioner, both of you ladies, I want to thank you so very much for tolerating us this morning, and we always appreciate your visits. This contract will move forward.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. The next item on the pulled list is from the Department of Highways. It's number 8 on the routine PSC green list. If the representatives are present, please approach the table, identify yourselves for the record, and I have a very easy question.
Good morning. I'm Eric Pelfrey with our Division of Professional Services. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Dan Davis, Cultural Resource Branch Manager for the Division of Environmental Analysis.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. If you would, please raise your right hand. Do Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so very much. And thank you all for both being here today. Again, I said I have a pretty easy question. I guess I could have called you, but I was too lazy. When we take a look at this contract, it is for environmental, cultural, historic, and archaeological studies and document the preparation on an as-needed basis. How much of this particular $1 million contract do we typically use each year?
It varies considerably by how much work we're doing, how much road work. So if we're doing more, if we focus more on maintenance, road improvements, paving, that kind of stuff, there's less work that we would do for this. This is primarily for survey, for new roadways, for anything that is an acquisition of new right-of-way. So usually for survey, I don't know, probably half of it. But we also have to build in the possibility that when we identify an archaeological site, we have to determine if it's eligible for the National Register. So we have to do an evaluation on that. So each evaluation typically takes about 2 weeks of field work, costs about $60,000. If we have to do a mitigation, we find that the site is eligible for the National Register. We have to excavate a larger portion of it, and those can run $350,000, $500,000. So that's one reason why we don't really always probably hit that $1 million, but we always have the possibility that we'll run into just one archaeological site can blow the whole thing if it's eligible for the National Register.
If I may, do we keep any records about what we spend on average? I'm not looking to catch anybody in anything. I just think when we look at a budget, we need to kind of have an idea of what we normally use, not normally ask, but normally use during that budget time.
Right. We've actually lowered this dollar amount through the years. My concern in the past has always been the mitigations that can be $350,000, $500,000 or more. And that's what I always so any of these, we got 4 of these contracts. So any of them can run into a mitigation, which will take half, or if not more, of the entire contract that we have set aside. So we've got a $500,000 upset, I think, for each letter agreement that goes out on these contracts too. And we hit that on occasion with the mitigations for the archaeological sites. That's like the thing that I'm always kind of concerned about. So if we run up to the $1 million limit because we've got a mitigation and we've got a couple of evaluations, we've got a survey, then we have to have an approval to increase that amount to pay for additional work beyond that in the 2-year period.
Thank you a lot. The reason I bring you is because I have constituents who have questions about this, and my constituents are getting so much better at watching these committee meetings. And since we are here to serve them, I simply ask the questions because I think they have that right to know. With that being said, do I have a motion to consider contract reviewed without objection? Okay. Senator Thomas, and then Representative Rourke. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Senator Richardson. Senator Thomas. Representative Ballman. Representative McCool. Representative Rourke.
Aye.
Representative Hart.
Yes.
And Chairman Douglas.
I vote aye. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I know some of these questions seem pretty simple to you all, but for the people who are footing the bill, sometimes there's just so much going on, they just can't get their arms around it. So thank you so very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the pulled list are with Eastern Kentucky University, and they are number 21 through 33 on the routine PSC green list, number 22 on the PSC amendment ivory list, and number 7 on the PSC for under 10,000 the goldenrod list. If the representatives are here, is there anyone here from Eastern? Are they virtual?
Senator, 2 of us are virtual today, and we have 1 representative in the room.
Thank you so very much. Yeah, we have 3 different ones. Thank you very much. We were just doing some collection of thoughts up here. We have 1 representative here. We have others who who are virtual, would you please raise your hands? Your right hands, please. Everyone. I don't see them. Did I hear a voice?
Yes, sir. This is Micah Hunsucker. I'm the director
Oh,
of
thank
procurement
you very
for
much.
Eastern Kentucky University. Brian Mackinnon, our chief operations officer, should be with us. I'm worried he may be having technical difficulties. It looks like his camera is.
Okay. I just wanted to see you guys on camera. With your right hands raised, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. With that being said, Senator Meredith has a question on the PSC routine green, number 21 through 23. Senator Meredith, the floor is yours.
Well, it's a question, but I'm not sure that's one that you folks can answer. But it's an issue that we've.
I'm sorry. Please both of you introduce yourselves for the record.
Sterling Creighton, Director of the Office of Equal Opportunity in Title IX, Eastern Kentucky University.
Ma'am?
Micah Hunsucker, director of procurement, Eastern Kentucky University.
Are these the only
And
two?
Brian Mackinnon, Chief Operations Officer.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, Senator Meredith. Would you proceed?
Forgot where I was now. I was saying that I'm not sure these folks can answer the question because it's a point of contention with me that we've seen with the University of Kentucky over the years that we're not approving contracts, we're approving a budget. You look at each of these categories for these contracts, and $600,000 for commissioning services, $600,000 for electrical services, electrical engineering, $600,000 for mechanical engineering, $400,000 for inspections. There's no single contract that we're looking at. What we're doing is approving a budgeted amount. And I don't know that that's really within the purview of this committee to do that. We're supposed to validate that contracts are consistent with the charges given to us, but approving this doesn't do any of that. Take any one of these, like landscape architecture. We approve $400,000, but then again, discussion with the University of Kentucky is what we've agreed to is they would come back and give us a report. Usually we get it in September. Is here's where we've actually spent the money. Here's who we spent it with, which is kind of a compromise, but it still doesn't, I think, cover us in terms of responsibility we have as a committee. Again, looking specific landscape architecture, how do you know that once it's proved that one of the contracts doesn't go to Billy Bob's Landscaping, who just, because they got a buddy within some particular department, gets a contract? So I don't even know why these contracts come to us. So it's not a criticism. These folks are testifying today. I don't know the answer, but I don't know why we're approving, unless we're approving a budget. And then my concern is, well, if we're approving a budget and they don't spend near that amount, this is not just Eastern, but any group that does this, when it comes back for the budget the next cycle, they say, well, we're budgeting $700,000 because of increase in expenses, but you only spent $400,000 the previous year. So there's just not a good accountability here, and I don't like this process, and I don't know what to do about it. But again, we're not approving any contracts here today. What we're doing is approving a budget.
Do I have any other questions? Frankly, Senator Meredith, I have to admit I had the same concern. I just didn't want to list them all because I mentioned number 22, which also falls in this category. I wasn't quite sure why these particular contracts were coming in front of the committee at this time. Senator Thomas?
Let me ask a question. If we don't approve these contracts, then how do these contracts get approved? Because these are contracts that Eastern is letting out for services that are going to be performed by Eastern Kentucky University. Now, they may be part of a construction budget that we've approved in terms of capital commitments to Eastern Kentucky University, just like we make capital commitments to other state universities. But if I were advising Eastern as an attorney, I would say yes. If you're laying out a contract for landscape architecture or engineering or appraisal services, that's a state contract that has to go through the Government Services Contract Review Committee. So I don't know what the alternative would be, because the contract has to be approved by somebody before it can be let out.
Well, I think the answer to that, Senator Thomas, is that they're going to go to the Finance Cabinet because they have the right to overrule us anyway. And I think it's specific. I don't know if it's just the UK and U of L, but even if we disapprove a contract for those two universities, the president of the university has the authority to overrule us as well. So I don't know what kind of latitude we have in this. And again, it's not a criticism of these folks. It's the process. And I just don't feel comfortable approving these. I think they need to go on to the Finance Cabinet and let that burden fall to them. But if we're asking UK to help us with this by giving us an annual report as to what's actually spent in these categories, and is that a reasonable expectation for every other university? And I appreciate your comment earlier about I like to see the universities get a lot of latitude as well. They know how to run their business. However, if something goes wrong, you know what happens. It comes back to this legislature for the financial fix. So we do have some financial responsibility.
Senator Thomas, do you have a second question?
I do, and it's really more of a statement. I guess this gives me the opportunity to say what I wanted to say this morning, Mr. Chair, and that is, I think maybe the time has come that we as a committee just have a meeting. I mean, I know we've got to give public notice and comply with the Open Meetings Act because we are a government committee. But I think maybe we should set amongst ourselves going into the 25-26 fiscal years some standards or parameters as to how we judge contracts. As I've made it clear already, I tend to give universities a lot of latitude when it comes to approving contracts that are out-of-state contracts because I recognize that they require special expertise. I'm sure Senator Meredith, I know, has a set of standards. I'm sure you do too, Senator Douglas. And maybe we ought to have a separate meeting, maybe next month or in early July, to say, just amongst ourselves, to say, what standards are we going to govern ourselves by going forward when we evaluate contracts? Because I think we need to do that with ourselves so that we can provide clarity to state agencies as they come to us and we ask them questions about concerns we have about contracts. Because I just think sometimes we appear to the public as being all over the place when it comes to how we approve or disapprove contracts. So I'm going to suggest that we meet amongst ourselves and come up with a what I would call a body of standards.
I certainly don't have any objection to that, Senator Thomas. However, that would require legislation at our next session. But in the interim, we're still left with this issue of, are we going to validate these things when we don't know what's in them? Again, not a criticism of EKU or any university, but the process is not a good process. And I'd rather just see us not take some action on this and let them proceed and let the Finance Cabinet be responsible for determining whether they're issued in accordance to procurement code.
Representative Rourke, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask, would it be appropriate to request that Eastern Kentucky provide us with a report similar to what UK does for these multi-contract that we don't have the actual person who's been awarded yet? Would it be appropriate for us to get an annual report similar to
we
what
can
UK
absolutely
does?
do that, Representative. We've provided it to the committee in the past. This is not the first time we've discussed these contracts, so we have started keeping that information so that we can provide it, and we'd be glad to do that.
I think that would be appropriate in addition to whatever the committee decides to do today.
Sure.
Thank you, Representative. Well, I'm going to handle this the way we normally handle it, and then we can see what other motions that we're going to put on the table. But initially, do I have a motion to consider the contracts reviewed without objection?
I will make that motion on behalf of Eastern Kentucky University. I'll do that.
Second.
We have a motion by Senator Thomas. We have a second by Representative Rourke. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Meredith.
Nay.
Senator Richardson. Senator Thomas.
Aye.
Representative Ballman. Representative McCool. Representative Rourke.
Aye.
Representative Hart,
No.
Chairman Douglas.
No. The motion fails.
Mr. Chair, from what I understand, at this point, the only options that we have available to us are a motion to disapprove or just not take action as we did previously with contracts and let them go into the finance cabinet for.
That's correct, Senator Meredith. Unless I hear a motion to defer or disapprove, then this contract will move forward. Do I hear any such motion? Okay. This motion will move forward, or this contract will move forward to the finance cabinet for a final disposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
I previously had a question on number 22, but that was all wrapped up, as I've already mentioned, in the 21 through 33. So we're going to No. This is number 22. This is the library list. Okay. Let's take a look at number 22 on the PSC Ivory list while you're here.